from Castle Goring, from Nikki, Aurora, and from me. Today we have a very special guest. We have Samantha Markle, and the whole of today's program is going to be me chatting with Samantha Markle and asking her questions about her sister, her father, their upbringing, her relationship with her sister, her lawsuit, and the Meghans, amongst other things. And hopefully you will find this enlightening, illuminating, and certainly some bit of it might even actually help to give you a bit of sympathy for Meghan's, shall we say, condition. And on that note, I'm going to turn this over to the taping that I did with Samantha. Okay? Thank you so much. Well. Today we have a very special guest with us, Samantha Markle, the notorious Meghan's sister, her big sister, her better-looking sister, the sister that hasn't needed plastic surgery. Says I'm being naughty. So, welcome, Samantha.
Thank you. It's so lovely to see you again, and thank you for the compliments. You know, as we get up in years, every little compliment helps.
Doesn't it just? Okay, well, why don't we just have an ordinary chat and so what do you think we should start with?
Oh my goodness. Okay, well let's start with rumors of divorce. Let's start with
and then actually, why don't we start with in fact, and having asked you to suggest, I'm going to step in, and why don't we start with what to you is the most heartfelt thing about this whole issue with your sister?
Oh God. First of all, I didn't think that we would be here so much time after the wedding, rolling our eyes in shock, one egregious seeming insult after another. And it's not just our family, it's the royal family. And this has been on continuum. So I really felt that there would have been some remarkable change and that things would be, back on a good, even keel somehow, and that perhaps she and Harry would have matured in their roles and developed moral consciences and treated people with kindness and with dignity at one point. But that didn't happen. And I think I'm feeling really shocked because, in my opinion and observation, they were given so many opportunities. Our family kept extending the olive branch. The British royal family gave them so many chances. And yet it seemed as though whenever their demands, whatever they were, weren't met, they threatened another book or they threatened another interview. And in those situations, it's just, I thought that we all got out of stone throwing after high school, but it seems like they took those PR opportunities, in my opinion, to sling mud at everyone, to deflect from their own deviance. And they kept going. And so when you ask me what's the most heartfelt thing of all, I think it would have to be that my father is not very long for this world, nor is King Charles, and nor really are any of us. It's a crapshoot. We don't know when we're going to get another day. And with that said, is that my father and King Charles both have these children who won't stop damaging them on the world stage in their last days when they are their most fragile. And my father certainly now, after 2 heart attacks and a stroke, which in my opinion were brought on because of my sister's egregious, cold, calculated actions, and totally unjustly.
I want to stop you there because I want to ask you about uh, Carl Raina. But what's his name? It is Carl Raina, isn't it? Or is no Carl Larson? What's Raina's name?
Jeff Rayner.
Jeff Raina. Sorry, I got them confused. But before I ask you that, I want to. Harry was never as nasty as he's become before he fell under your sister's influence. Was she always so nasty? I mean, you've known her all her life. Were there signs of this truly vicious, nasty, destructive? Uh,
Not to this extent. In my opinion, there were signs of controlling mechanisms and, threats of uh, abandonment when she didn't get her way, like icing dad if she didn't get her way about the production with Gigi Perot, little things like that, but they weren't to this extent. And I think the reason they've escalated so much, not only does familiarity breed contempt, along the way she seems to have felt more empowered, but she also acquired a lot more money that she could use to advance her agenda, whatever that is, and to damage other people who presented themselves as obstacles
of
or
course,
who challenged her.
yeah, the reality is
Yeah.
that she before she became the tremendous failure that she now is, she was a limited success, and then she was an outstanding success because let's face facts, her role in Suits was a limited success, but it was undoubtedly a success. And your father has previously told me that he noticed a change in her once she became successful in Suits and then got involved with Soho House. So I suppose if we are trying to nail things down, uh, the ego kept on expanding with every time it's like a balloon blowing up, and the more air you put into it, the bigger it gets. And and I have always thought when she entered the royal family, well, when she realized entering the royal family was a sure thing, she just her ego just exploded. and and so at that point there was no need to pretend in to be nice. She didn't need to use charm anymore. She could exercise power rawly and did, which leads me the the which to me is one of the most crucial things in this whole story.
Mhm.
How she set your father up in terms of that interview with Jeff Rayner. And I really, since you are the person that Jeff Rayner approached, I would like to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
Well, exactly. And as you know, Jeff Rayner reportedly lost his case against uh, Sunrise 7 ABC Australia because I think he tried to sue the studio because my father shared the story and his experience. And Jeff Rayner reportedly lost that case because he could not show that it wasn't true. So I'm prefacing this with that to show that, yes, I do believe that he set my father up. He contacted me because he didn't know how to get a hold of my father. Nobody did. And I was out there defending my dad. So he contacted me, and I still have the text messages. And he promised, he said, the media's really been beating your dad up. We think we can help. We'll make him look like he really is instead of the slovenly thing that nasty paparazzi have been making him look like. So I trusted that. And no, I was not paid for the record. I was a go-between because they didn't know how to get a hold of my dad. They knew that in defense of my dad, I would want to help him. So I put them together. I, let him know how he could get a hold of him. And it seemed above board. It seemed like I could really trust him to take care of my dad and not abuse him in the media, because he was being abused by paparazzi and PR. And
May I
unbeknownst to
stop you
us,
there?
this was an agenda.
May I stop you there? Didn't you, and interject, didn't you come to various agreements with him, limiting what he should and shouldn't do, the distances, etc.?
No,
You did.
no, I didn't. There were no such agreements. He just promised me that it would be discreet, that, because I didn't want my dad flooded with people in public gawking if there were cameras around. So he said, "Oh, don't worry, I'll be 100 yards down in the bushes. Nobody will see me."
Oh, okay.
Right.
So
So,
he did
and
guarantee.
that was the whole reason for wanting that. But so you can imagine, I trusted him as my father is fragile. And then I see him walking a few feet behind my dad and next to him in the internet cafe. Subsequently, my father let me know that it was Jeff who chose the cafe when my father said, "I know this really great little place. We can go and it's private and quiet." Jeff said, "No, no, no, I know this great place." Of course, he said that. In my opinion, he knew there was a camera on the ceiling in the internet cafe. He knew that he was going to turn it into a huge story and stage the whole thing. He knew where that camera was and that it would catch them, so that the Daily Mail could do a huge scandal story from that point of view, looking down at them from that camera in the internet cafe. And that's exactly the photograph that came out as a headline. No coincidence, in my opinion. So I felt that the whole thing was staged. And then, lo and behold, he goes to his Facebook page and brags about a cheeky little hit on my father on his own Facebook page. So he admitted that it was a hit. He knew exactly what was going on. And why do I think my sister had something to do with it? Because she photographed with him before the wedding. She photographed with him. If I'll just say this, if a photographer ruins your wedding, you would be beside yourself. You would want nothing to do with that scoundrel, right? Well, if he ruined her wedding and it was so horrific, why would she photograph with him when she got to Montecito? And then we see photographs, Jeff Rainer as the photography credit on the bottom of those photographs of her walking the dog in Montecito. Doesn't seem like she was upset that the wedding was ruined at all. In fact, because they
So,
were friends before the wedding and after, I would suggest that they planned it.
and may I interject and say, if I recall correctly, Jeff Rayner was also one of the photographers who was credited on their Netflix series.
Ah, no coincidence there.
Well,
So
oh,
exactly.
Samantha, you mustn't be like that. It's all a terrible coincidence. Meg
No,
was so taken advantage of by everyone. One tail left eye, please.
the problem with it is that scandal around the wedding that was totally set up to frame and to destroy my father as a bogus excuse for keeping him away from the wedding. When really, I think the reason to keep dad away from the wedding is because he would innocently share her life stories and they wouldn't coincide with what she had told the royal family. Like, she didn't get grants or scholarships. She never worked for the embassy. All of that would have been dispelled right out of the gate as rubbish. And she would be embarrassed because then anything she had said to the royals would be, debunked as untrue by my father speaking. So how
So,
perfect. Keep them away
I
from the
think
wedding and come up with a really great reason to keep them away from the wedding, because the public were skewering her and wondering why she would keep her whole family away from the wedding. She, in my opinion, she had to come up with something really great to justify it all.
but
In my opinion,
wasn't just your father that she was keeping away. It was
right.
it was the Johnsons, it was the Raglans,
Right.
and the rest of the Markles.
That's right.
Because you see, I don't know what you think, but I don't think it's only the royals per se that she was worried about. I think it's Harry that she was
Mm.
really worried about, because she had led Harry to believe she was this disadvantaged Boadicea-like creature who had womanfully fought against the odds and succeeded to such an extent, and that she would be the answer to his dreams, and she
Right.
would be able to move him from the United Kingdom to California, where they
Mhm.
would become the leading lights of Hollywood, the premier couple on earth, and certainly they are even now the most talked about and the most
Right.
photographed couple on earth. It's all negative, but it doesn't
Yeah.
alter the fact that and she, on the back of that, they are negotiating with Netflix at the moment to extend their contract, just on the basis of the fact that they are the most newsworthy royal couple on earth. So in a was she always so strategic, and was she always so coldly ambitious?
I don't think so. I think, as we learn and grow, naturally you learn what works and what doesn't in your interaction with people. So I think she started to learn that isolating people or threats of isolation, like my dad, works as a control mechanism. It's like comply or DIE. It's like do as I tell you to do, or that's it. I'll have nothing to do with you. And for some people who cared about her, that's effective because they don't want to hurt her little feelings and they don't want to be isolated. So, I think that she learned that that's effective. And the more money she acquired, and the more, in my opinion, she had at stake, the more vicious the control mechanisms became. When you have more to lose, like desperate people do desperate things, I think it seems like she just became nastier and to everyone around her, not just us, because she knew it was easier to silence a family who aren't wealthy and who can't just go to court and battle every issue. But we started to find out that we were being not only disparaged, but defamed. That an attorney in London told me there was an entrenched media agenda against me. And I was clueless about what that was.
That
So
was the
I had
man
to
from
find out the hard
Vardags.
way pardon?
That was the solicitor from Vardags.
Yes, that was Alex McCready at Bar Dogs, and she was lovely enough to do some digging and find out firstly that I was never on a fixated persons list.
It doesn't
That
exist.
was
The-
well, I no, this was horrible. This was like the beginning of it all
Oh,
because
sorry,
I'm a
sorry. May I
mental
say, no, I'm cutting you to make an important point. There
okay,
is no such thing as a fixated persons list. It does not exist. It is a
correct.
fiction. It is
And
an
and I got I
invention.
got I got a letter from Bar Dogs that came from Scotland Yard Met Police that I was never in their computer, that I was not on any such list, and there was no such list. Yet that article went around the world, even Fox News here. Every small town publication, every television show said Samantha Markle has landed herself on a fixated persons list. I'm a mental health counselor, and these people were making me look like John Hinckley Jr. or Patricia Hearst. I was mortified because I don't have the financial means to fight something like that. And it wasn't true. It had no merit. I had just cleared an FBI background check, so I knew I couldn't be on any list. I thought, oh my God, how can this be happening? And I had also studied social behavior and group dynamics and some of this, phenomena that we've seen unfolding. And as a degreed mental health counselor, I was like, oh my God, I am caught in the crosshairs of the most disgusting, mentally ill, social, psychological phenomena. And I never thought I would find myself here. It's like it was like being in the 1600s with witch burning. Somebody says you're a witch, it goes around the world, and they're going to tie rocks to your ankles and throw you in the river to see if you float. I thought, is that coming next?
Yes, but
I
don't you
mean,
think,
and
don't
I found out that it was at the behest of her protection officers. So she had somebody, her little henchman reportedly, go to Roy Anika at the London Times and write this story. And I got a message that said, Samantha, are you aware that you're on a fixated persons list? I said, no, I'm not. I'm a mental health counselor. I'm in a wheelchair in Florida, and I don't behave like that. What on earth are you talking about? They said, well, if you have no comments, we're going to go ahead and print the story. So I said, print the story and I'll sue you.
Stop right there. Are you saying that Meghan's protection officers contacted Roy Anika at the
Correct.
Sunday Mail, at the Sunday Times, and
Correct.
and that they are the ones who ran. Well, we know that Meghan and Harry were busy planting stories through Jason
Right.
Off, as well as he has admitted. So basically, you're saying that you can trace this directly back to Meghan.
Correct. And because of the time lapse and the statutory window, I couldn't go back and sue. And it took me a long time to follow the trail of nuts to the squirrel and find out where it came from. There was an article out there that said it was at the behest of her protection officer. So I was like, aha, well, nobody's even hiding it. They just think I can't fight it. And they're just going to go ahead and force this and print it anyway. So that was December in 2018. And at that time, I really didn't know where it was coming from, how I would fight it, but I knew it wasn't true. That article stayed at the top of a Google search, trolls all over social media. Everybody said Samantha's on a fixated persons list. No, I've never been on a fixated persons list, and shame on anybody who was a party to that. And yes, I do blame the London Times for this, because I wrote them a letter asking them to run a retraction, and I got crickets. Everybody was afraid to touch it. And they didn't know that I had a London attorney who at least got me proof that it wasn't true, but I couldn't move forward with the suit because I couldn't afford to keep going. Attorneys are very expensive, but they were so gracious to get me to the point where I got a letter that said it was never true. I was never in their computer. And I did an interview with the Daily Mail in the United States, a live interview. I held up that letter, but gee, no coincidence. Nobody in the world printed that exoneration letter, because that just doesn't drive ratings and sponsors, and it doesn't raise the hackles of the people. It would have exonerated me, but nobody wanted to print that. They wanted to keep running the story that said I was on some kind of sick list.
Okay, now I need to ask you, because your lawsuit as it stands at the moment, where does it stand? Your
The
lawsuit.
appeal, oh yeah, and it seems like her PR would love to keep it suppressed, like it was just dead in the water. The appeal has been pending for a long time, and it's in federal court in Florida now. Oral arguments are reportedly taking place in August. So we are moving forward, because the defamation of me is bigger than anyone can imagine. And in my opinion, she knew I didn't have the resources to fight it. But I'm lucky to have an attorney, Peter Tickton, who believed in me and who has been willing to take this to the end zone, because I should have never been defamed like this. None of the nasty PR about me was ever true. And I just think it's sick that for some reason, someone with so much money, who could have been a change agent on the planet and had a heart and done the right thing by family and not lied about everything in her life seemingly, it would have taken a lot less time, energy, and money just to be a kind person and not lie about us and not need to hide her own lies.
So this brings me to the kernel of the matter.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Meghan was very badly spoiled by your father. Uh, and I mean, it's obviously had some effect because, for instance, there's that notorious tape of them where I think there she's by the side of the water and he asks her a question and she rolls her eyes to the sky as if to say,
Mhm.
"Oh, don't bother me, you tiresome old man. You know, who do you think you are? I'm the great me." And there's also that other rather very telling video of her at a
Mhm.
children's party where it's not even her party and she's taking over and she's regulating everybody as if she's a traffic cop. And so
Well,
was she
did you did
what,
you did you notice in that video that was, I believe that was Nikki's party, who and she had a crown on her head as the birthday girl. Meghan walks over, takes the crown off of the girl's head, Nikki's head, and puts it onto her own head. So I don't know why we were surprised when I saw her stepping in front of the Queen in a line of procession to receive flowers or mocking the Queen. I mean, it's like in my opinion, she wanted to be the queen. She wanted to be the queen or a princess then, and I think she still does.
do you think
I
she's
think
mentally do you think she's mentally ill and do you think also she has been damaged by possibly prenatally? These are very important questions.
okay. So let me say first, I'm not diagnosing her, but I will say that firstly that Dr. Carol Lieberman, a world-renowned psychiatrist, has coined her as a malignant narcissist. As a human being
And a
observing me,
psychopath.
observing
I
my
think no,
sister.
and I think she also said she's a sociopath as well.
And I will say, I do agree with her professional diagnosis based on behaviors that I've seen that fit DSM criteria for that diagnosis.
Mm.
So I think Dr. Carol Lieberman was spot on, and I applaud her for her um, experience and observations because a lot of us were scratching our heads going, what's going on? I mean, you ask if we noticed these behaviors when she was little. At that time, I hadn't gone to school yet and gotten my degree as a counselor. I didn't know what narcissism was. And when she behaved in these flippant ways, you want to give kids the benefit of the doubt. And to some degree, we enabled it because, first of all, we didn't know what was going on. Secondly, you want to give them room to be kids to some degree. And you just think, oh, she's just being a flippant teenager. You justify them because you don't want to be anal retentive about every little behavior and embarrass them or call them on it. So you let it roll, you ignore it, you write it off, you laugh, or you go, oh, silly,
Stop you there
but you,
because I want to stop you there and interject.
right.
Because it's been my observation, having written two books on Meghan and Harry, that Meghan has had and always had real issues, not only around her identity, and also I want to get back to the prenatal damage, but we'll deal with this first. Uh, about her identity but also I've always felt that she had a tremendous amount of envy where you were concerned, as well as jealousy, because I mean, Meghan, by her own account, has had very mixed feelings about being mixed race. The fact that she spent most of her life trying to, or actually passing for white, tells me that she had a real issue with the African part of her heritage. The plastic surgery, the hair, all of that tells me that these are giveaways that she really was very wanted. And then she had a naturally prettier white sister who was 16 years older. So when Meghan was a little girl growing up, you would have been in the flower of your youth. And this, of course, was before your MS kicked in. So you were a beautiful young girl. You also mixed, which people don't know, that you mixed in pretty fashionable circles with pretty famous people. Your father there was was also a figure of some eminence in the Hollywood scenario. And I know this
Mm,
from people who know George Clooney, incidentally,
mm.
used to work with your father. But we're not going to go there now. We're not going to divert. So do you think that looking back on it, that it's a fair assessment on my part that Meghan had a lot of sibling rivalry and envy, and she most likely was, oh gosh, there's my beautiful sister. I want to be like her when I grew up, because also you were acting, you were good looking, you were, and do you think there's an element of that, because that would also explain the tremendous degree of malice she has for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a mind bender to me. I don't see why. First of all, I never considered myself, any supermodel or anything. I was just a pretty geeky, normal teenager, and however I looked, whatever. I mean, it was what it
You were
was.
a
But I
nice looking
certainly,
girl.
I
Come
wouldn't.
on.
But
You,
even when I was acting, I wouldn't think that she would be jealous of me because I always tried to include her. I thought she had her own natural beauty and look, and she was at a school, Immaculate Heart, where a lot of celebrities' kids went. It was an eclectic crowd. There were girls of every skin color. Tyra Banks reportedly went there. Disney's kids went there. So, I thought within that eclectic crowd, she would find her niche and not feel a sense of competition. And if she felt a sense of competition with me, I think it might have been only that, and my brother too, that we came from another mother and she was at an age where she was vying for dad's attention. But I also think Doria contributed to that, in my opinion. As I pointed out in my book, she walked in and threw a catalog on the bed, and I said, "What's that?" And she said, "I'm starting a new business." And I said, "What's it called?" And she said, "Three Cherubs." And I was like, "Three Cherubs?" I was like, "Well, why not five cherubs?" Because, there's Dad, Doria, Meg, and me and Tom. And I said, "Who are the three cherubs?" And she said, "It's me, Bunky, and Flower." So that was a big red flag to me as a teenager. I think I felt kind of hurt. I was like, oh, so she's pushing us out of the picture. Instead of being a stepmother who includes the kids from another marriage, she was already making a statement that she didn't see us as part of her little circle. And there's no other way to slice this apple. And I think over time, she was probably programming Meg to believe that it was just her, Bunky, and Flower, that it was just those three. Bunky was her nickname for my dad. And that Tom and I weren't part of the equation. And so it's by no coincidence, every time Meghan would go to visit her mother every other weekend, which kind of waned, she would come back with it like her personality had shifted. Like she didn't, feel connected to me and Tom. And that progressively became more evident and more pronounced. In fact, when, Dad asked us what we wanted for Christmas, and I was sitting on Meg's bed in her bedroom, and I showed her something in a catalog. It was like a Tanzanite ring or something. I said, "Oh, look, Meg, that's pretty." She goes, "You're not getting that ring, babe." And it was like watching The Exorcist. I was like, where did this come from? And I felt like she was channeling Doria. I thought, this kind of hatred. All I did was point out a gift, and she immediately seemed to feel threatened, like she had to compete about a gift because Dad was asking us what we wanted. And I said, "Meg, I said it would look pretty on you, don't you think?" I thought I would throw it in her direction to de-escalate a challenge in her mind or a sense of competition. And I kind of like gave into her. I said, "Oh, I'll just get perfume or something, but that would look really cool on you." Because I didn't know why she was feeling the need. Like at that moment was just like her hackles came up and her fangs came out, in my
you're
opinion. And she
basically
felt like,
saying, so you're basically saying she was always poisonous and she was poisoned by Doria. But I
I
want to
think,
ask, because
I think that was a
I don't,
factor.
sorry,
I
sorry.
think that was a factor. Yeah, I think that was,
But
if I would have had a loving stepmother, and Doria didn't feel the sense of competition or distance from us because we came from a different woman. Maybe Doria was jealous of my mom. But if Doria was a loving stepmother, I don't think Meghan would have behaved that way towards my brother and I. I think she would have loved having a big brother and sister, and it wouldn't have been an issue. But I believe that Doria programmed her to think that we were not her real brother and sister, even though we're paternal blood siblings, all of us. Same dad, same blood, same DNA. If I prick my finger, it's going to match Meghan's.
But you
So,
see, what you're saying is not incompatible with
right.
envy and jealousy. It's actually a dimension of it, and also
Right.
the exclusionary part of it. It's a very interesting psychological dynamic. But what I mean, I'm Jamaican, so I know all about mixed race relationships and mixed race
Mm-hmm.
marriages and the nuances within them. And I also know of, I mean, I've heard it so many times in my life of you know, because let's remember, Doria herself is not black. Doria is mixed race, and Doria did the classical thing that many women of color did, which, as one of our maids said, you've got to improve your color. And
Mm.
Doria improved her color, and Meghan has improved her color. If you look at it in that sort of term, and there is a tremendous amount of hostility racially in within people who have mixed feelings about being mixed race, that they will be exploitative on the one hand and hostile and denigratory on the other. And Meghan and Doria both seem to fit that category, in my opinion. What do you think?
So I have to clear something up because I can see, oh, the wheels are turning. There are trolls out there going, Samantha called Doria the maid. Okay, let's get this straight right now. And I even alluded to it in my book. First of all, yeah, I called Doria the maid, but it had nothing to do with skin color. I lived in a conservative neighborhood in Woodland Hills. Everybody's lawns are manicured. And on the first day of school, my friends and I pull up, they gave me a ride home. And Doria's on the lawn. And, anybody who wants to challenge me on this, we'll pull a hair sample and it'll show any substance that she's ever ingested. It's a forensic analysis. So I'm not lying. She's standing there on the lawn in a bathrobe with a garden hose and her hair and rollers, smoking a joint. She had a marijuana cigarette in her mouth, and a big puff of smoke was blowing across the lawn. I was so embarrassed I could have died. And my friend said to me, "Who's that on your lawn?" And I didn't know what to say. I was so embarrassed. What am I going to say? That's my dad's new wife smoking a joint on the lawn. I was embarrassed because of the joint. I said, "That's our maid." But she wasn't the maid. We had a maid. I think her name was Carmen or Carmelina. I forget her name. We did have a maid that came, but I was too embarrassed to tell my friend that the joint smoking mama on the lawn was my new stepmother. So if anyone wants to make that about the race card, screw you all. That's just not the way it was. And I had a right to feel embarrassed about that.
And
So I
also,
think any teenager would.
your apps, I mean, it's very understandable that you
Mhm.
would have felt the way you did. So I need to ask you about Doria's ingestion of drugs while she was pregnant with Meghan.
Okay. My brother was pretty forthcoming about this too. Several times in the house as teenagers, we would smell this really weird smell coming from downstairs that smelled like burning wire. And people suggested that that was crack, but I didn't know what crack was as a teenager. I thought somebody was burning leaves next door. And my brother said he smelled it a lot, and he said that he had seen her cooking it on the stove. So I had seen Doria smoke pot. That wasn't a big deal. I thought a lot of people in Southern California coming out of the 70s, part of me as a kid, just thought, well, I I don't really agree with that, but whatever. That's her lifestyle and that's her choice. Um, and there was a lot of wine drinking. You know, she and her friends would run up the stairs and their eyes were red and they were always laughing. And her friends would say, "Hi, babe. Hey, babe." And I knew that they were kind of high. I mean, you know, I don't, and again, Doria can't sue me about that because I'll test her hair sample and we'll see who's telling the truth. The bottom line is, as a
While she was
teenager,
pregnant.
no, I mean, my brother and I shouldn't have been subjected to that kind of behavior and also expected to keep quiet about it. It's like, no, if you want to do that, cool, but don't tell me I can't tell people that it happened. And since it happened when she was pregnant with Meghan, I can't help but believe that some of that affected maybe my sister's development in utero. You're not supposed to drink and smoke when you're pregnant. And if Doria doesn't like that I said that, too bad. I don't think that's healthy for a baby. So sadly, I think that may be a factor with some of what Dr. Carol Lieberman calls malignant narcissism. When a baby's brain is developing in utero, you don't want to ingest substances that affect that neuronal development, the cerebral development, because it can have short and long-term effects. So I believe there's something to it, and I don't think I'm wrong. You know, I don't know for sure. I don't know exactly what substance caused that, but you know, everybody knows that she likes marijuana. The other stuff, I don't know about that. Tom witnessed it. I smelled some weird things in the house coming from downstairs in the recreation room that smelled like burning wire. I can't pinpoint it, but whatever it was, you don't ingest substances when you are pregnant. You don't drink alcohol when you are pregnant. So,
That's very
yeah,
interesting
yeah.
because people who are on the fetal alcohol spectrum, as opposed to the syndrome, usually have little or no conscience and little or no
Mm-hmm.
empathy. And they're usually very self centered and very hostile. And they have tremendous hatreds that come out of nowhere and often focusing on parents, siblings, and
Mm-hmm.
partners. So,
You also, I mean, you mentioned too, and I'd like to get back to it when you said my dad spoiled Meghan.
mm,
Um, Relative to his income at the time, he spoiled all of us. If we wanted $10 for the movies, he would throw a $50 bill at us and tell us to have fun. We, you know, when we were younger, we were spoiled based on his income at the time. It just so happens that he started making more money by the time Meghan started to need and demand things as a teenager, you know, more expensive clothes, shoes, and private schools. We didn't need private schools when I was, you know, at the school age because we went to good schools in both Chicago and in Southern California. So I didn't really feel the need to go to a private school.
mm.
Meghan wanted to go to a private school. That was a great option. And I'm glad my dad did that for her. But to suggest that he spoiled her, it's really hard to say. First of all, I don't think he could have foreseen that she
What is
would.
criticized? Sorry, Samantha, I'm not criticizing him.
I,
Maybe
no, I
spoiled
know, but
has a different meaning in America from here. It simply means that he indulged her and he loved her possibly too much.
I don't think there is any such thing as too much because there are a lot of kids who are indulged who don't go left field and either, as Dr. Carol Lieberman would say, they don't become narcissistic just because they're indulged and they're not selfish and self-preserving. There are a lot of kids who are indulged who are very empathetic, who are loving, reciprocal, and are, you know, change agents in their community and really give back. So I think this was something that was organic and unique to her. And I think my dad just wanted to give her things that he didn't have as a kid. And he didn't see any reason until later in life to pull back on those reins.
Mm.
I think he really believed he was doing the right thing.
Oh,
and giving her everything.
nobody's criticizing him and saying
Yeah.
that he wasn't a good father and that he didn't
Mhm.
try to be a good father, and also he was basically a single father because,
Right.
as you know, Doria was not around for long stretches. I
Right.
won't bring up where you think Doria might have been. I think we will give that one a miss, shall we?
Well, and even, to be clear, when they divorced, we were all in the house in Woodland Hills when they divorced. Dad had his place in Hollywood, and Doria had one in Los Angeles. Meghan had a really tight bridge between two households, and in her early years, she was splitting the week, half the week with Dad, half the week with Doria. Then progressively, it became more time with Dad, less time with Doria. And then at one point, when she was at Immaculate Heart, starting in junior high school, Dad was her full-time parent, and maybe she saw her mom every other weekend. And then, so I will say that at about junior high, which is important in the formation of character, uh, from what I saw, she wasn't really seeing her mom because I was upstairs with them in a room adjacent to Meg when I was looking for a job and an apartment. And then I ended up renting the place downstairs in the same fourplex. So I would have noticed if Doria was around. I never saw her there. I never saw her come over. So my point of reference is based on my own observations. And yes, Dad was her, I believe, primary agent of socialization, single parent, giving her everything, buying her everything, taking her to all of her dance classes, all of her acting classes, taking her to the studios, picking her up when he got off work and she was out of school and taking her to the studio with him. It was Dad. So,
I want to ask you something else.
yeah.
The hysterectomy. Can you because Tom has said that Trevor told him
Mhm.
that Meghan had a hysterectomy when they were married. And Trevor has never denied this. And uh, now because there was a 16 age
I,
difference between you and Meghan, and also because you were the glamorous, happening older sister, there would have to have been some competitive element. So I can see where in a situation like that, the sisters are not going to necessarily be confiding in each other.
right,
But
right.
but
Yeah. I mean, it's sad if something like that happened in retrospect. I would have felt sad that she wouldn't come to me and maybe want adult womanly advice or tell me about it. But I get that. I respected her privacy. I didn't talk to her about my feminine life, and she didn't talk to me about hers. It was like, oh, I'm fine. Oh, I'm having fun. Oh, he's cute. Oh, he's cute. That was the extent of us talking about boys and men. And so, for trolls out there to say Samantha needs to give it up, Samantha's protecting Meg. I'm not protecting Meg, and you can't protect someone or give up something that you were not privy to, that you know nothing about. So I didn't know anything about that, and I'm not going to lie to placate trolls and say something was true or that I knew about something that I didn't. I simply didn't, and I find it sad that if that is true, that I couldn't be a source of strength or, someone that she could come talk to about that. But
you
again, I respected her enough to never push her on issues. Like, she's a young woman. She's got peers and friends who she confides in. I was, 17 years older. So I'm like the old aunt. She's not going to confide in me and everything because it's a different peer group and different life lens. But that's her business. It wasn't my business.
but I need
So,
okay, but I
yeah.
ask you, do you believe it's true? Uh,
Um, I do believe now that my brother is telling the truth and that Trevor is. And reportedly, Trevor said that she couldn't give him children. And this is according to my brother. I didn't get this from Trevor. And sources out there say that Trevor put this in an article or an interview. So I haven't seen that yet. But I do believe
I,
because there are no delivery certificates, and I heard stories early on around the time Archie was allegedly in utero and being born. I heard stories that royal staffers were not allowed to see or touch her abdomen. That, and what really got me was the idea that a royal physician was not allowed to examine her womb. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but if I were pregnant with a royal child, you would want that child in the best care of the best medical practitioners that money could buy. And so for a royal doctor to examine your womb would be an honor. You'd feel safe, and absolutely, yes, you'd be flaunting that stomach everywhere. Like, here, look, put your hands on it, touch it, just look, the baby moved, look, oh my God, I need an ultrasound. Oh my God, whatever the case is. The fact that it was a mystery and hidden was kind of a red flag to me. I thought, why? Something's wrong here. And
also, I
so,
point out, I mean, she also clutched her belly at all times, which of course
mhm.
have ensured that nobody could touch her stomach or feel what was going on behind the hands that were shielding the belly. So if anybody had made a move to touch the belly, they would never have reached it because the hands were always there. So
Well, I mean, I think too, Getty Images are very reputable as a photographic agency. And so I was seeing all of these pictures of this alleged moon bump and pillows dropping underneath the skirt and hoses hanging out of the skirt, and heard about the Mayhew Clinic and saw pictures of her bending down allegedly at 8 months with her knees all the way to her chest in high heels. Now, I don't know. I watched obstetricians and gynecologists say, at 8 months, you can't bring your knees all the way to your chest, and certainly not in high heels. And I know when I was pregnant, you wouldn't bring your knees to your chest because, first of all, you'd be worried about hurting the baby and falling backwards. But so all of the pictures, my point is, out there were inconsistent with the idea of a real pregnancy. And I thought, what is she not contextually aware? She's trying to hide something. This is really sloppy pool. Like, you got to know that these are not things that pregnant women do. And when you're pregnant, there's not a pillow under your skirt. And there's live footage of her walking towards camera with her abdomen swaying left to right in a black and white checkered dress. I don't know about you, but I think muscles keep a baby intact. I never had my abdomen swinging left to right when I was pregnant, because your muscles prevent that kind of movement. It would be weird. And so all of the visible evidence out there suggested to me that it was unlikely that there was an abdominal pregnancy. And I thought, okay, let's remove all that and just hold out for, so what if there was a surrogate? Babies are amazing. It doesn't matter how they come into the world. If you can afford a surrogate because maybe you want to keep your figure, and you have other plans professionally, and you don't want to stretch out your abdomen. I think it's a little
it's
vain.
also it's
But
not possible. May I cut you? It's also not possible to be pregnant without a womb. I
right.
just make that point for what it's worth. But
Well,
I agree with you.
exactly.
Surrogacy is certainly a route. And your father told me, and I know he's told you, that Meghan collected her eggs from
Correct.
Ellie.
That's another thing too. I heard about that she reportedly picked up her frozen eggs in July, which coincidentally was 9 months before the announcement of Archie being born. So I thought, okay, a surrogate would make sense. But then when Harry, on the day after Archie was supposed to be born, and they were holding this little bundle, and you could only see a little peek hole in their eyes, Harry slipped, in my opinion, and said, he's changed so much in the last 2 weeks. Where I think the whole world was like, what do you mean 2 weeks? The baby was supposed to be born yesterday, and you're just presenting him to the world now. 2 weeks. Oh, so he's 2 weeks older than you're letting the world believe. So in my mind, that would make sense to wean a baby away from a surrogate mother. And I thought, okay, well, maybe there was a weaning period. Maybe they're not ready to announce a surrogate mother yet, but if they can afford a surrogate, cool. It's still a baby. It's still their baby if there was a surrogate mother. So I didn't really make a big deal out of it. I watched this firestorm of photography and gossip on the internet of, oh my God, this is a moon bump. There's not a real baby. There's not a, and I just thought, wow, I mean, I didn't really care how Meghan and Harry felt about it. I thought, if there is a child by surrogate or adoption or whatever, this poor child is going to grow up and read all of this crap in tabloids and cyberspace and go, wow, nobody believed I existed, you know, and but the child would probably have to say, why were my parents creating this shroud of mystery and secrecy instead of just saying, hey, we had a child by surrogacy or adoption.
There is a reason why, and the reason is very simple. A surrogate cannot accede to a hereditary title. A surrogate can only, a surrogate or an adopted child in this country cannot accede to a hereditary title. It can only bear a courtesy title. So there would have been no possibility of any child born of a surrogate becoming a prince or a princess. What it would have been a lord or a lady, because it would have taken the rank of its father's dukedom and would have become Lord whatever Mountbatten Windsor and Lady whatever Mountbatten Windsor. It would all.
Well, and why would she mind that? What would be so horrible about that? Oh, it wouldn't be the same as prince or princess, right?
Well, it
I
also
mean,
the line of succession
right.
lawfully. It couldn't be in the line of succession lawfully. So those are good reasons why there would be an incentive to pretend that, but those would be, in my opinion, the only reasons why somebody who could go down the surrogacy route and would have gone down the surrogacy route would not have admitted it. And
Well,
so may I say, it would have been a tremendously popular thing, because all sorts of women who can't have children or won't have children, who have opted to go down the adoption or the surrogacy route, such as me, I went down the adoption route. You know, it would have been a wonderful thing in terms of surrogacy and adoption. But of course, this is not what happened. But without, so we're not actually saying, are we, that she went down the surrogate route. We are simply saying that there is sufficient doubt for us to question her actions. I think we need to make that point clear for legal reasons, don't you?
well, yes, but I mean, but I think, you know, it's become evident that neither Harry nor Meghan like all of the gossip and all of the controversy or the challenges to the birth issue. So my question is, why not silence everybody and just produce a DNA sample or proof of delivery? Like, I mean, if you had those things, it would be very easy just to put them out there and say, this is what happened. You know, this is what it is. And so, you know, if they don't like it, why don't they just satisfy the curiosity and
Maybe
the
they do like
controversy?
it. I mean, let's be clear about the fact you're dealing with two people who are very disturbed, both of whose mothers had issues that are that could have impacted upon their fetuses. And so we could actually be looking at two people who have been damaged in utero, and which would mean that we need to have to be aware of what has happened and why it has happened, and which in a funny sort of way would cut them some slack and give them some latitude, and would also bring this awful scenario to something of a halt because at the moment everything is so destructive and unintelligible. But I mean, there's Harry and Meghan could easily have cleared up the mystery with those children, but they have elected not to, which in my view is also very damaging of the children's interests, but it's also damaging to the prestige of the royal family, because
Well, I mean, oh, sorry.
so
You know, it's so arrogant and I think cruel of them to try to silence the public or to suggest that the public have no right to question what they have been seeing. Like, we were born with eyes and a brain for a reason, and you've got a large population of people in the world who are saying, look, we saw the moon bump the pillow dropping, we saw the bringing the knees to the chest, we saw, you know, Harry slip and say he's changed so much in the last 2 weeks. There's no DNA certificate, there's no physician signed delivery certificate. We want to know, especially the British taxpayers, not just the Americans, but we want to know what's going on, because as British taxpayers, we have a vested interest in this. We paid for the wedding. We pay for the well-being of the children. We support the royal family. And so I think they have a right to know. And how dare Harry and Meghan act like this is our private life. Nobody has a right to know what we're doing. And if you ask or you challenge us, we're going to sue you. Get out of Dodge. You're on planet Earth. People witness things. They talk about them. And this is not the Dark Ages. You're not going to silence everybody who questions what they are seeing.
well, of course,
So,
they've been trying to silence everybody, but we won't
yeah.
get to that, because I'd like to wrap this up with you commenting on your father and the effect all of this has had upon him. Because, in my opinion, your father is the living embodiment of King Lear, and Meghan is a combination of Goneril and Regan, and she is Goneregan. And if it sounds like something distasteful and communicable, that's well deserved. Let's put it like
Yeah, for the man who gave her everything, every breath, every nuance, all of his money, his blood, sweat, and tears, her life, everything that she is, her contacts, her connections in Hollywood, to be turned on, I will say shat on, as he has in his last years. And he wouldn't be this fragile if he had not had 2 heart attacks, not 1, but 2 heart attacks and a stroke. And at no point did she ever care about his well-being or try to reach out to him. And all that poppycock in the media that Harry put out there, one of them reportedly did, of, oh, we tried to reach you, we tried to send a car. Bullshit. They sent a car, or their PR said they did it after the fact, after he was already in the hospital. So, no, you know, but aside from all of that around the wedding and when he first had his heart attack, that I think was brought on especially by the frame job with Jeff Rayner, that I believe she was a part of course that would stress him into a heart attack when the media, this professional man whose credibility is down, the media is out there defaming him, calling him a loser, calling him a deadbeat dad, saying he staged Popper. He didn't stage anything, you liars, you sick liars. You guys set this up so you could hide your own lies, so that he would never talk and he would be discredited. And then if he did talk, nobody would believe him because you painted the picture that way. So we're not in the 1600s, and shame on you. He would not be this fragile. He would not be, you know, running the risk of dying any day after a serious stroke that took his speech. Shame on you. And if you go through that someday, then you deserve it for what you did to this man unjustly. And Harry, shame on you. You have no conduct becoming, no military bearing, no royal demeanor whatsoever. You're not a gentleman. You're a sow, in my opinion, and a rude pig. And I hope, someday you wake up. And if you're marrying her and you don't have any empathy, remorse, or shame, when you wake up and it hits you in the face, I hope it's good, because you deserve it. I mean, they do. They really do. There was no reason for any of this, especially to my dad.
Well, I want to leave you with
Oh.
answering one last question, because you and your whole family have become world renowned, traduced very unfairly. Latterly, you have had some of your dignity and some of your reputation restored. But what has it really been like for you as a human being who, before this, led a perfectly nice and, I mean, okay, you have a terrible disability, which you have been coping with very admirably, and so I think we need to have that in the frame, so to speak, as well. But you were leading a perfectly ordinary life without the attention and the negative attention and the being caught up in this very destructive situation, because in my view, Harry and Meghan have been treating the world to the evocation of a Sophoclean tragedy and a Shakespearean drama and a Phaedo farce in real time.
Mhm.
And I mean, a Sophoclean drama would last for maybe an hour. A Shakespearean tragedy might last for an hour. A Phaedo farce again, but this has been lasting for 7 years now, or actually maybe even longer. So
And
how I want you to end with your, as a human being who was leading a perfectly ordinary and relatively sedate life, finding yourself being caught up in a sea of feces, all of which
um,
has been flooded out of Harry and Meghan's orifices.
exactly. I mean, God bless him. President Trump started pointing out fake news media, and he was dealing with it at the same time I was, and not, no surprise to me, by some of the same paid PR. Sunshine Sachs, DNC paid PR at the behest of Harry and Meghan. We found out a lot about that. And the bottom line is, when you're someone like me and you don't have millions of dollars, you can't fight that, because the public in their busy day, they're going to believe what they read, what they see on television. These PR companies control like 9, 10, 12 publications and the same amount or more of television shows. They say what they are told to say by the PR hub. And so the whole agenda, there was an entrenched media agenda against me, was to make Samantha look like a horrible person, make her look like a basher, a slammer, a crazy old jealous old hag. And a lawyer's daughter friend said, Samantha, you're representing Samantha. Oh my God, she's a horrible person. Now that went around the world, so that my neighbors, when I went out in public, I was having to disguise myself, because the tabloids at the stands that were put there by paid PR were making me look crazy and awful. And I had people out there in the entertainment industry, a couple of them, I won't mention names, saying, yes, I know her and she's actually really intelligent about me. No, I'm not a crazy person. I'm not a basher, a slammer, a horrible person. This was PR, fake news, just like what President Trump dealt with. And it's very powerful. It's, one story goes around the world at lightning speed and thousands regurgitate it. It's called aggregate news. It's very dangerous. I think it needs to be illegal when it is not true. And I think paid PR that disparages and defames other should actually be illegal. I really think, I mean, it's like it's a character assassination. You may as well be dead, but you've got a body.
Well,
Unless you're,
I have to say,
yeah.
I don't agree with that. I'm a
Oh.
great believer in free speech. I have suffered for over 50 years from being defamed, and there are libel laws. And I think what should be made easier is suing people for defamation and taking the tremendous expense out of it, because the
But
average person is not able to fund a defamation suit. But
see,
I think that we need the laws that are in place to be more accessible, and because free speech is a very important thing. And if we
well,
didn't have, and also we
I,
have people like Harry and Meghan determined to ruin free speech for everybody. So we
well, I agree. I
careful not
agree
to
with
go down that route.
exactly. I mean, I agree with free speech, but there is a line when your speech limits, when someone's speech limits the free movement or thriving of another because it is demonstrably false, like you said, defamation and untrue. There's legal recourse for that. But I remember when I worked in broadcasting, if you read a story and you said anything that was not true, the flash would go off in the newsroom. In other words, as there were ethical standards of journalism and broadcasting. And so I think we need to get back to that a little bit. I think it's incumbent upon, whether you're getting your news from Reuters or, the AP, when you're reporting stories, you have an obligation to do some amount of fact finding, because what you put out there as a broadcaster will be the shot heard round the world. People repeat it. They don't even question it because they think you are credible as a broadcaster. They believe and rely on what you are saying because of your reputation as a broadcaster. So I think it has to start there. I mean, we can't all, walk on eggshells and have to worry that what we're repeating is or is not true. But from the sources who have the highest credibility that the public rely on, like broadcasters and journalists, I think the onus is on you to do your homework and make sure that you are reporting fact. And
Well,
if it's not fact, you should run a disclaimer that says either this is for entertainment purposes only, or this information has not been verified, or make sure you say allegedly about everything, because it's really dangerous
well,
to,
we're getting into a totally different subject now. So on
yeah,
that note, I'm going to say, Samantha, thank
yeah.
you so much. It's been, as ever, a pleasure to speak to you. And hopefully we'll catch up again soon, privately as opposed to publicly. Thank you
And
very
we'll continue fixing the world.
God, and good luck with your case against Meghan, because
Thank you.
I think what you have been subjected to has been an absolute outrage. But I really do think that she is a piece of work, and and I just am grateful that I don't have a sister who is quite who would even consider approaching that level of monstrosity. Let's leave it.
Well, I will gladly give her away.
Aurora says she won't eat her. She only likes.
Thank you, Lady Colin Campbell. Pleasure as always.
Take good care.
Cheers.
God bless. Bye-bye.
God bless.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please remember to keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. And if you truly enjoyed this, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. Bye bye.